Folks, I've recorded this video to give you some tips on drawing, especially if you're drawing something architectural and you're using the gridded method to transfer a reference photo onto another sheet of paper that has the same grid on it. It doesn't matter what size. All of these things that I'm saying will carry through no matter what ratio you're using. So you are going to be transferring an 8.5 by 11 image that's been gridded out from 1 inch to 1 inch onto a sheet of paper that is 18 by 24 inches that has a grid on it that is a total of 17 by 22 inches. Humor me. Pretend that this is my 18 by 24 sheet of paper, that all of these squares are 2 inches by 2 inches with the exception of this final row that is only 1 inch wide and 2 inches long. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I've written letters on this side and I've written numbers on this side, and I'm going to go ahead and in the margins I'm going to write corresponding numbers and letters so that I can orient myself as I that was wrong, I meant to put a 9 there, as I transfer my image. And just a few reminder words, A, B, C, D, E, that was for me, not you, is that when you're drawing your grid, you don't need to really press down too hard, and if you think your grid is too dark, so that it's going to distract you in the end, you could even go ahead right now and use a kneaded eraser potentially to lighten it up just a tiny bit, just like hit it with a kneaded eraser just a bit before you get started. Because ultimately the grid, it's a really, really powerful tool, but you might not want it to super overwhelm your drawing even in this beginning stage. So I've just kind of just like hit it a little bit with that kneaded eraser so that I can still see it, but so that it's not quite so present, you know what I mean? Cool. So when you are working from an architectural reference image, you've got a couple of options. In the video about grids, I spoke about the option where you fold down and then you literally transfer from every row. Like here I am lining it up, and then I'm going to say that in this first row I see some shapes that look like that, and then I'll fold it down to the next row, and I can even just line it up like this, and then draw the shapes I see. And I really messed that one up already, so the cool thing about drawing it this way, row by row, is that you will wind up with something that resembles your final image, but you don't need to worry that much about using a ruler or really understanding the rules of perspective, because you're just using the gridded lines to help you transfer your image. This is slightly easy because I'm doing it at the same scale right now, but when you're going to be doing it on your large sheet of paper, it'll be just twice as big. It will still be pretty intuitive, and once you get the flow of it, you can just move down row from row. That's one way to do it. Another way you could do it, if you to have a little bit more freedom with your drawing and also really practice perspective, is you could go ahead and identify where some of the big diagonal and horizontal lines were. So I'm going to, let me take a look at this and actually think about it before I start doing some crazy marks. Okay, so this, I'm going to say that this lower wall here creates a really strong diagonal that kind of defines the composition. So I'm going to, for the sake of the demo so that you can see it, I'm going to use my big marker to mark the reference lines on here, and then I'll use my pencil to mark them on my sheet of paper. So I'm going to mark that diagonal. This vertical of the side of the tower is pretty darn important, so I'm going to mark that vertical. The vertical, I'm going to do the vertical of this wall. Doesn't really matter too much. I'm choosing some lines that sort of frame the house, if you know what I mean. And then I'm choosing to do one more line, and I'm actually going to do this line here. So now I'm going to transfer this line, this line, this line here. I'm drawing little circles at the terminal points of the lines. This line, if it went out, it would go right there. This line, and this line. So instead of going through the hassle of drawing every single row at a time, I'm going to just transfer these lines that I've just drawn. I'm going to begin by transferring this line here. And I can see that this line starts on the 4th row, and then it goes to A all the way across. And what I'm looking for is, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to recreate that same angle onto here. So I kind of count 4 down, and I see that I'm going to mark kind of where it intersects with the edge there, and then it goes all the way across to over about here. And then I'm going to just take my ruler, and you would do this on your big sheet of paper, obviously, but I'm just using this small sheet of paper for the example because of my camera situation. And so now I know that that's the side of the house that has, here's where the tower is, and so on. And so then what I'm basically doing is I was just using the grid method to help me transfer the line of the diagonal, instead of going through and using the grid method to help me transfer all of the shapes. It gives you a little bit more freedom, where then you can go ahead and just sketch out the shapes. So then what I would do next is draw this line here that is this edge of the tower. So I notice that when I look at this, it seems like the line intersects about here. And I would take my ruler and kind of eyeball it to be sure that as I was drawing that line down, that it looked square all the way down. I think I could do like that. And I'll draw that line across. And now I know that that line is the line of that side of the tower. So that means that I'll kick out this edge here and kind of, okay, that's where the roof lines up. And then as I start to sketch in other things like the shape of the roof of the tower, as I sketch in this diagonal, I'll keep in mind that it will be at a slightly wider, more open angle than the diagonal below it. Because if I think about the rules of perspective, here's our horizon line, here's our vanishing point, and as lines radiate outwards from the vanishing point, they become wider and more open angles. So I can sort of fudge it by knowing that this diagonal is more or less true, and everything that is going out from it is going to be angling up like that. So you can imagine how then I could carry out that same logic to draw in this next line here, which will be the edge of the outside wall of the building. and then this lower diagonal, so I'd go 1, 2, 3, that goes 3 in H, so this is H, this is 3 here, something like that. Then I would draw that diagonal across. Now why am I showing you this method? Because you've got the grid, you could just go through and do every single square. But if you want a little bit more freedom, like let's say, yeah, this is a copy, but it's not an exact copy. If you wanted an exact copy, you would have just pressed print on your printer. What you want is, the grid helps you start out your drawing so you know more or less like where basic shapes are, and then from there, if you want to, you can continue to refer back to your image, or you can start to deviate. Like let's say you don't really care about some parts of the image, or you want to add a figure in there or something like that. You just wanted to use the grid so that you could more or less get your bearing on things. That's totally fine and valid. You don't need to copy this totally like so that it looks exactly like a photo. That's actually not the point. The point of this exercise is just that you have sort of an idea of how perspective works, and the grid can be a powerful tool for helping you lay in all of the angles, and then from there you can make it your own. So I sometimes find that finding all of the exact angles and stuff is pretty tedious. So I really like using the grid to lay it out so that I can find some of those basic angles, and then from there I can start sketching in. And I don't even, if I'm doing a looser method, I don't necessarily go row by row. As you can see, I'm skipping around and I'm starting to draw in the areas that I found more interesting, using the grid as sort of a rough guide of being like, oh yeah, that's over there. But with the knowledge that as I moved further forward in the drawing, I would probably just get rid of that altogether. And once I had the skeleton of the drawing drawn in, I'd start adding value and totally make it my own. What I'm looking for with this assignment is just that you are creating the illusion of space. So the grid can be really helpful to get you set up in creating that illusion, but ultimately, don't worry too much about your reference photo. Worry about what your drawing looks like. Years from now, reference photo is going to be in the giant garbage pail of digital media. Nobody's going to look at it, but somebody's going to run across your drawing. And I just want them to look at the drawing and think, wow, that's a really cool, believable space. I buy it, and the drawing is really awesome. It's the drawing that we care about, not the reference photo, especially for this assignment. So I hope that helped, and I'm really looking forward to seeing your work. So thank you so much for watching.